It's already here. We are now recording. So welcome everybody. We're going to get started today by just a general announcement that later in the meeting, we're going to be doing our staff assembly delegate election process. I'm going to take this time to call for any nominations from the floor for any of our 3 open positions. And just to recap, those 3 open positions are for a 3-year term, a 2-year term, and an alternate position. So if you have any interest, speak now or forever hold your peace and let us know which position you'd like to run for so we can get you added to the ballot. All right, well, hearing no further interest, we'll hand that off to Jen later in the meeting. She is our trustee ballot handler this time around, just like last time. So thank you, Jen, in advance. So next up, we're going to get started with our Chancellor and Provost Roundtable. So welcome Chancellor Guskiewicz and Provost Blouin. And we also have Kathy Brennan here from EHS to answer any questions that we might have for her and for EHS. So welcome, Kathy, as well. It's good to see you as always. Kevin, I'll let you go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming.
Great. Thanks, Katie. It's great to be with everyone. And I here as we sort of are starting, this is the start of week 3 of the semester today. And so far, things are going well. And, it's been over a month now since many of our employees returned to in-person work. And I know it's been a lot for some of you and your families. And I just want to take an opportunity to thank everyone and thank you for all that you've done. I know that many of you are taking on additional duties, being flexible and really helping us to carry out our mission here at Carolina. And Katie and I had a chance to talk about this just yesterday in our one-on-one meeting. And I do want to take this opportunity also, Katie, to thank you for your leadership. And I think you're going to do a great job leading the forum. And it's also great to see Shayna on my Zoom screen here as well. And so, I want to do a special call out because I've been listening to members of our leadership team about where some of the pressure points are within the workforce and where we're challenged a bit on campus. I know that, I want to give a special call out to those of you working in parking and transportation. I know there's been a lot of transition and change throughout the pandemic regarding that, and you've had to come back in and sort of work within some of those changes. And our housekeeping teams are just doing an incredible job despite being short-staffed. You were all accomplishing your jobs every day, doing a wonderful job despite the challenges. And I just want to thank you and know that we're still learning, how to be most efficient and perhaps consider how new options for our workforce might be possible. Becky Mangini gave a wonderful talk at our leadership retreat back earlier in August and talked about, the future of work at Carolina, what that might look like and what we've learned throughout the pandemic. And she's been listening to a lot of folks and going to be working closely with Rick Bernowski, and Rick leads our operational excellence team and really trying to find ways that we can be flexible. The pilot programs that are in place have been going well, and we're learning from that. So stay tuned and more to come from that. I just talked with Becky earlier. I know she's going to, we'll want to talk with the forum probably, at an upcoming meeting. I've heard from many of our faculty, students, and parents about the vital importance of the on-campus experience that we've had over these past, really, I'll say 3.5 weeks, because we started moving students back around the 9th of August. And so we're now, in week 3, close to week 4 of this, despite the fact that, we've just finished the 2nd week of classes. And it's so good to be back in the classrooms with students. I'm teaching a class myself. I teach it on Tuesday afternoons, and I've now completed 2 classes. And just, you don't realize what was lost by not being in person. And my guess is that many of you are, realizing the same thing as you've had an opportunity to come back. We welcomed our largest and most diverse class ever at Convocation in Kenan Stadium in the rain. Provost Blouin and I sat up on the podium with rain coming down for the first 15 minutes or so of Convocation, but it was just a wonderful occasion. We probably had close to 6,000 students in that Convocation in the stadium because we had both our first years and many of the sophomores came in for that. But this class, the class of 2025, represents 19% of that class are first generation college students. They represent 94 North Carolina counties, 46 states, and 98 different countries. But I know there's just how excited they are to be back, and that we want to try to do everything possible to provide that in-person experience for them. Having said that, I recognize, and I know Provost Blouin certainly does, we just were on an update call with Orange County Health Department and some of our infectious disease experts, and we're meeting every other day with members of those teams. And we recognize we are trying to carry this out in the middle of a pandemic. And this is not easy. We've said from the beginning, this was not going to be easy. I know that there's a lot of anxiety and fear around the Delta variant. And I want you to know that we recognize that many of you are working under those conditions with that anxiety, and we're grateful for what you're doing and trying to help us carry this out while keeping our campus safe. I want to just highlight three things before I pass it off to Provost Blouin, and then we'll open it up to questions. But I want to focus on make three sort of quick points. One around vaccines making a difference. The second point, that fall 2021 is not the fall of 2020, and then a little bit about our community standards and how they're working. So first, 90% of our students are now vaccinated, and this is, this was our target. This is where we wanted to be, and I think that number is going to creep up a little bit over the next few days as census is completed. We know that there are a number of folks in the denominator that aren't physically here, and so we think that vaccination rate will creep up closer to 92, 93%. We know that vaccine is protecting us from serious illness, and there's emerging evidence of that. If you're vaccinated, the contagion period is shorter. The number of symptoms, if you are infected, are fewer. They're less serious, and they last a shorter period of time if you're vaccinated. So this is why vaccinations are so important. We've got to remain vigilant in encouraging vaccination and mask wearing among all of our campus community members. And I want to hear your ideas on how we can encourage vaccination among our staff, because that's the cohort that we still have to boost up to get up above 90%. And we want everyone to remember that there's, to go get vaccinated, there's paid time off for our staff to go and get vaccinated, and the vaccinations are free. Dr. Cohen and Dr. Barzan just went and spoke with departments on campus to answer questions on vaccines, and did an incredible job. And I think it encouraged others to go and get vaccinated. So if there are other opportunities where we can do this, I'd love for you to let us know. Second point, the fall of 2021 is not the same as the fall of 2020. We are a highly vaccinated community, as I've already said, and we have a year's worth of experience in dealing with this virus. But yet there's still a lot of uncertainty. We're fortunate to be surrounded by some of the world's best infectious disease public health experts that are guiding us. But yet, we're still seeing high levels of community spread across North Carolina and in the Triangle. Fortunately, Orange County as when I last looked, we were the second best county in the state. It fluctuates. I think one day we're the top, the next day we're the second, but out of 100 counties, I'm proud that Orange County has done such a great job in this regard. And so we know, despite that, we're going to have cases on campus, and we had to announce a few clusters yesterday on certain floors in some of the residence halls, and we'll continue to keep the community apprised when there is a trend or a cluster that's identified. But fortunately, the number of cases that we're seeing are close to what our experts had projected, and we have planned for this. So, our goal is to try to catch cases and limit the spread. And we're getting daily, sometimes hourly updates on the COVID situation on our campus to keep everyone safe. And as I've already said, we're meeting regularly with our our experts here locally. But yet there are many concerns. But also, I think we've just got to remain vigilant, as I've already said. In case you're wondering, we have ample quarantine and isolation space. We really prepared for that. We'll be moving about 40 to 50 students out of those spaces over the next few days because they've had their 10 days in there, but we're moving fewer people in this week, it looks like, because our numbers have gone down a little bit this week, at least as of last evening. We'll see how today and tomorrow goes. But we'll continue to adjust and respond to the virus as necessary. And then my last point, I just want to emphasize that I think our community standards, COVID community standards, are working. We're dialing up some of our precautions to keep us safe, increasing testing, proactive testing in residence halls whenever we see a trend developing. We know that helped us catch a few cases that could have led to more spread had we not caught them early. We did change the requirement that faculty must wear a mask, at least for now, but, over the next 4 to 6 weeks. And we may change that, but must wear a mask while they're teaching. And we had hoped to not have to require that. We just felt that was the safest thing to do over the next 4 to 6 weeks. Regarding large outdoor events, we are strongly encouraging people to wear masks. And I want to just, we're getting a lot of questions about sporting events, and we're still, about 10 days away from our first home football game. And there may be some changes there. The Provost and I are working closely with our experts on how to best manage that. But we want to know what you're hearing and what your ideas, how we can continue to keep our campus safe. But we are, to this point, fortunately seeing no transmission in the classroom, in the dining halls, but we're spreading the density in those dining halls. You'll notice that we're putting additional canopies up, at least 3, if not 4 additional canopies or big tents will be going up around the Lenore dining hall facility over the next few days. That's going to, again, help to reduce the density inside Lenore, because I know there were some concerns there. But as we move forward, as I said, I want you to continue to raise any questions, concerns that you may have, and I look forward to taking your questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to see if Provost Blouin wants to add anything, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll add just a few things. Again, let me just first start off by thanking all of you for all the work that you're doing on behalf of the university and this state. It has been a challenging time for everybody, and the fact that you've been able to do your jobs so well during these really tough times is a credit to all of you. I also want to thank all of you for doing your fair share of getting vaccinated and encouraging others to get vaccinated. As Kevin mentioned, we do have some encouraging numbers. Orange County, 77% of the county is fully vaccinated. 81% is partially vaccinated. So we're gonna top the 80% mark probably next week in terms of fully vaccinated, and this is an incredible number for us. As Kevin mentioned, our students, are going to probably top 90% vaccination later this week. Again, tremendous cooperation and participation, and all of our employees, our staff and our students are doing a great job. I do want to make one note with regards to our dashboard. We did remove the employees percent vaccinated off of the dashboard temporarily. We are looking at the numbers a little bit more closely. There was some question about how the percentage of faculty vaccinations were being counted. It happens to do with a kind of the way we count faculty at this university. So we're going to refine those numbers. And Kathy, I just want to thank you, Kathy Brennan, for the incredible work that you've been doing on all of that. And you may have some additional comments that you may want to add. I also just want to encourage all of you to encourage others to get vaccinated. I want to thank Dr. Weber, Dr. Eron, Dr. Wall, and Dr. Cohen for coming to meet with many of the staff across the university. And thank you for creating the space and the opportunity for them to meet with them. I've been told that there were hundreds and hundreds of staff, who met with them during the wee hours of the morning, throughout the day, and in the evening. And obviously, the intent of those meetings was to give us every opportunity to share with the staff who might be vaccine hesitant, to understand better the facts around the importance of vaccination. And just as a reminder, we got an update, from UNC Healthcare, and as you look at COVID-related admissions, 87% of the COVID admissions into UNC Healthcare are from unvaccinated individuals. 93% of the individuals who are in the intensive care unit at University Hospital are unvaccinated individuals. And the 7% who are vaccinated, those are individuals who have other mitigating circumstances like immunosuppression and other factors that put them at high risk of progression of disease. And probably one of the most revealing statistic is that 100% of the deaths that have occurred within UNC Hospital have been unvaccinated individuals. So I share those numbers with you only to reinforce, I think, what many of you already know, but if you can further share that information to your colleagues to encourage them to get vaccinated. So the other piece of information that I just want you to know, I think I mentioned this last time, but I want to reemphasize it. UNC Healthcare is going to create a facility in Metamont for the administration of monoclonal antibodies. If you know of someone who is tested positive and who is at a high risk of progression, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, or immunosuppressed, and you know that they have tested positive, please strongly encourage them to contact their physician, and if they haven't done so, encourage them to put them on the monoclonal antibody treatment regimen. This is a regimen that saves lives. It's the best treatment that is known to us right now, and there are very few adverse events or side effects associated with it. So I'm just strongly urging that if you know of people who fall into that category, please encourage them to consider monoclonal antibody therapy as a form of treatment for their COVID. So a lot going on. I want to also thank Katie, who met with us yesterday. Katie represents the staff and the Carolina Next Innovations for Public Good Advisory Committee, and we had a wonderful meeting yesterday talking through the strategic plan, the progress that we've made, and some of the changes that will take place in the upcoming year. So Katie, thank you for your participation on that committee as well. We are continuing to have a robust conversation on data science at this university, and I've shared that with you in the past, and we're going to have a mini retreat sometime later this afternoon with the Chancellor and some representation from the board, and we're looking forward to having a very engaging conversation about the future of data science on this campus. So just to say, a lot going on. We're trying to continue to pursue our mission, even though we are in the midst of a pandemic, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do your best to pursue the mission of this university, despite all that's going on around us. And there's plenty of that. So with that, Katie, I'll turn it back over to you. And maybe Kathy, I don't know if you want to add Is there anything new that I missed that everyone should know about?
In terms of the vaccinations, just to second that, as the Chancellor mentioned with students, they're looking at refining the numbers based on who's actually on campus, who's enrolled. The same is true on the employee side. So we're looking to make sure that we can refine those numbers based on, who's specifically on campus. Also potentially adding affiliates. So we do, as many people know, we do have people on campus that actually are not UNC employees. For one example might be our dining staff is a contract dining. So we're looking to see if we can somehow implement the affiliates, at least partially, into those numbers as well. So there should be more to come on that in the next week or two.
Thanks, Kathy, and thanks, Kevin and Bob, too, for all of those great updates. We did have some questions in the chat that I'll go through. I know there's questions about the faculty numbers, which is why the numbers got removed from the dashboard, but are there more firm numbers on the staff side that you can report on?
I can jump in on that one if it's useful. So one of the challenges of the numbers originally is Kathy and her team very appropriately worked early on in the summer to pull a list to be able to allow people to attest. That structure that they built for people to attest that they had been vaccinated was really just a voluntary thing at the time. We were not planning any reporting. We did not plan to report any percentages. But then as people saw the student data and were comparing it to the employee side, we began to use that same structure and started looking at percentages and that sort of thing. What happened is the list that she pulled, appropriately so at the time for the task at hand, did not include the people who joined us as adjunct faculty later in the summer or who came on 9-month contracts. So the numbers for the faculty were not entirely right because they didn't include all of the people that came after that original list was pulled. So we've gone through and updated that. As of last evening, the staff numbers do not appear to be very different, though, as you might imagine and understand, staff numbers change every day in a way that looks a little bit different than faculty numbers, in that we have movement all of the time. So it's a little harder to get a solid number, but it's always within a range on the staff side. The numbers, we spent a lot of time on this last evening, and I want to give a lot of kudos to our colleagues in IT and a handful of other folks, but it appears that we are at about, that the numbers are just under 80% for staff vaccinations. I will say that they are decidedly lower among SHRA employees. While I don't want to jump in and give my remarks before it's my turn, anything you all can do as representatives in your districts to communicate the importance of getting a vaccine, it cannot be understated. And a reminder, we give people the opportunity to use time if they get sick as a result or need an extra day as a result of the vaccine. They are afforded leave time accordingly. But the numbers for EHRA non-faculty are much closer to 90% or just over 90%. SHRA folks, then, if you do the comparison, are closer to the 50% range, and we get 77, 79% total, I think was the number. We're going back and reviewing all of those. But again, I can't underscore the importance enough of helping people get vaccinated. And the Provost and the Chancellor noted some events that we've done targeting specific areas, making sure people have information about the vaccine so they can make the most informed decision for themselves. But we know that the vaccine works, and we certainly want to encourage those who have the ability to get it and the willingness to do so, the opportunity to get it as quickly as possible. Great. Paid leave for vaccine reaction available for temporary employees. I don't believe so, but I'll leave that to Link and the leave folks to chime in. And we can do that during my time, so I don't bump up to some of the other presenters we've got.
Great. Thanks, Becky.
Yep.
So other question I wanted to pull in from the chat, why encouraging people to wear masks at outdoor events? Why is it not mandated?
So we are following right now what, you know, the guidance is from the state, from the Department of Health and Human Services, and local sort of guidance. And so, but I will tell you, it's being revisited. The provost and I just talked about this morning, and I'm actually going to have a conversation with the mayor here in a little while. So it's, as we said from the beginning, we will adjust our plans accordingly. You know, we're also looking at data from around the country about large gatherings and where there are trends. And, you know, I know there's been questions about sporting events. Well, Major League Baseball has been, you know, the entire summer, they've been putting 30, 40, 50,000 fans in stands without masks. And we've looked at their data. There's no trends of spread of infection there, or of the virus there. So we've got a team that's looking at this, and it's always subject to change.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Keith, your hand's up.
Yes, good morning. I have a question. I have a question furthering mask, because we are mandating them for indoors. What is the disciplinary action for those who just don't want to adhere to the community standards of wearing a mask indoors? I personally work in the union, so I see how many people come in for asymptomatic testing, and it's people every day. And so there are people, but what I am finding is that students have become very good at living in the gray areas of these mask mandates. So what they'll do is they'll go get a soda or something from Wendy's or Chick-fil-A, come inside and sit right, like, for instance, the hallway leading into my office, it's one way in, one way out without using the emergency exit. So they'll sit there with their cup of soda for 2 hours and 45 minutes with no mask on. And as soon as you walk out your door, they just put the cup up to their mouth and they're sitting there for soda from Wendy's does not last for 2 hours and 45 minutes. We all know that. It's just that they have found a way to skirt the rules. And there are people coming in and out that don't wear a mask. What is the incentive for them to wear the mask if there's no disciplinary action? I mean, yes, wearing a mask, you're a good person, you care about your community, but not everyone does. And we all know it only takes a few people to create a cluster.
So maybe I can try to answer that. We have recognized that eating and drinking is a problem. You know, and certainly in the dining halls, that was a major problem, that students were coming into the dining halls because they had Wi-Fi and air conditioning. They used that for prolonged periods of time. We have encouraged through new signage within the dining halls and encouraging individuals to be responsible and to spend no more than a certain amount of time to eat and to complete their lunch. The eating and drinking portion, we're asking people to eat, and then when they're not eating, put their mask on, and then when they need to take another bite or another drink, they can take their mask off. So we are encouraging that behavior. And as far as enforcement, you know, we are expecting that faculty in the classroom, you know, are enforcing the mask mandate, and we have not had, at least to my knowledge, any clear violations, you know, of masking within the classroom setting. Obviously, outside of the classroom setting, it's a little bit harder. I think you're right, Keith. You know that it's a little bit softer, and it would require someone, even you know, if you felt someone was abusing the privilege and was not working within the community standards, you know, to either approach them individually if you're uncomfortable with that, then to contact someone within a position of authority within your facility to talk to that individual student. All disciplinary actions go to the Dean of Students and Student Affairs. And we have a system and a process to discipline students if that privilege is being violated or if the community standards are being abused.
Okay, thank you.
I know it's not a perfect solution, you know, but enforcement has always been I think we all know that enforcement of some of these, particularly outside of the classroom setting, is going to be a challenge for us. But I would encourage you to do your fair share and make this known to someone if you think someone is abusing this community standards.
Okay, thank you. Little known fact, there's not very much that I'm uncomfortable with, so trust me. I very politely say something, but a suggestion or something that I was thinking, and I don't know if it's possible, you all may say absolutely not, that it's just not going to happen. In areas of shared space, I know the dining hall is the dining hall, and that's where essentially that's where you eat. But places like the Union that have Alpine and Wendy's that have eating areas as well, are we allowed as the Union to put up signage saying this area is a designated eating area, like the hallways in front of people's offices? Can we deem those non-designated eating areas, and in this area, a mask must be worn at all times? If you're going to eat and drink, there are areas at Alpine and Wendy's where you can sit and eat. Is that something that is feasible?
That's a great suggestion. And let me ask Rick Wronowski to follow up on that. If you could just send me an email, Keith, you know, in terms of where you're located or where you think new or modified signage might be appropriate. We had a lot of signage throughout the entire university. We have taken a lot of it down, but there may be the need to reappropriate signage. We have put new signage into the dining halls, consistent with, I think, the things that I already talked about. Don't dwell in these dining halls. But there may be other reasons to add signage, you know, particularly if people are eating in an area that just they shouldn't be eating in, you know. And so let me ask Rick Wronowski and the facilities team, you know, to take a fresh look at that, and if there are other places that people on this call would like for us to take a look at to reevaluate, then also send that to me as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
We'll make time for a couple more questions, but I'm cognizant we're getting to the end of this section of the agenda. Stephanie, you are next.
Thanks, Katie. I think this question is for Chancellor Guskiewicz, and this is really about the hybrid pilot program and thinking about hybrid work in 2022 and moving forward. From what you said earlier, it sounds like there is a group on campus that's thinking about this and thinking about how to implement it maybe more broadly and what success looks like. So I guess two asks are related to that. One, if this is a formal group, my ask would be that someone from the forum has a seat there. I think it would provide good like on the ground perspective about how this works and what this could look like for staff. And then the related question is if, and maybe this is more for Becky, but the Personnel Issues Committee, which I co-chair with Matt Teal, gets a lot of questions about the hybrid pilot, flexible work arrangements more generally. And I know that you guys have done a good job sending out emails when this was rolling out initially, but I think staff on this campus really would benefit from like a page that tells people really like what this program is, who's participating in it, broadly what the metrics are for success. I know that is largely a unit by unit like evaluation, but just to keep staff at this university updated on what this program looks like now and what it looks like moving forward would go a long way in both like better communication around this and more transparency, but also in letting individual staff members and managers and units maybe think more about what this could look like moving forward for those who either are currently a part of the pilot or maybe want to be a part of this version in the spring or moving forward. So,
yeah, so I'll Becky and I are going to be meeting to discuss this, and as we're sort of evaluating how the pilot's going, and as I said, Rick Waranowski and his team are going to likely be getting more involved with this as we evaluate, best options moving forward. So we will. You've made some good suggestions, Stephanie, and we'll come back to the forum with a plan.
Great.
Thank you.
Kira, you were next.
Yeah, thanks. So I really appreciate the conversation around numbers and data, because what I am hearing and sort of what I'm seeing and what my question pertains to is the reliability of data and the numbers that are being provided, specifically when it has to do with the students' vaccination rates. So I know you've talked a little bit about, tweaking metrics for the faculty and like the key elements that are sort of informing and making those numbers complicated. But I want to just want to reference a couple of things. Over the course of the month, we've seen different numbers about the vaccination rates of students. And it went from, on August 6th, in the email that came out, that was indicated that 93% of our students were vaccinated. And then it dropped to 87, and then to 80, and then it went to 88. And so I'm looking at the emails right now. And in the initial email on the 6th, it indicated that over 27,000 students had completed the attestation and said that they were vaccinated. So I guess my question is coming from, I've been in a lot of meetings this past week where there is some distrust of information and data that's appearing on a dashboard.
Kara, let me jump in, and because I have to actually jump into another meeting at 5 of the hour, which is in 3 minutes, and the provost can finish this answer if I screw this up. But you raise a good question. I would argue that people should be pleased that the numbers, they should trust them, because they actually went down. And the reason they went down was that we were originally reporting the percentage of vaccinated students who had actually entered the registry. And it was at 93%, 94%. We were then asked, well, what about all those who aren't entering the registry who may actually be on our campus? And so, to credit the provost here, he said, we should probably include them, and it's going to reduce the percentage of vaccinated students. So that's actually being as transparent as we could possibly be. So we included at that point, it was about 2,300 students who we didn't even know if they're here, put them in the denominator, which reduced the number of the entire, who we believe are the student body actually represents. So it went from 93 down to 88. It's now at, as I said, I think today it's just bumped to 90% right now, which means we believe that 90% of the students who are actually, of those who have entered the registry are vaccinated. And whenever we find out tomorrow, those who are not here, the denominator will be reduced and that percentage will likely go up. So I think we've been extremely transparent and erring on the side of caution. And that's a credit to Bob, because Bob's the one who said, let's get those individuals in there to be safe. And then I'll ask Bob to talk a little bit about how we're validating those, their audits taking place, and that percentage is very high as well. So Bob, tell me if I've messed that up in any way.
No, you've described that accurately. And to be honest with you, I think we were always a little bit nervous about sharing some of these numbers, mainly because there is a little bit of uncertainty, just as we've talked about uncertainty in terms of how we count faculty and count staff. That there also was uncertainty, in terms of how you count students and what's in the numerator and what's in the denominator. And so what we thought we would do is, just try to be as transparent as possible. So when we asked the students, have you been vaccinated? Yes, no, or I don't want to tell you. And that group emerged. What we did not know, as the Chancellor pointed out, is that there's another group that was not responding at all, but yet we thought were students who were going to register, although that was not definitively known. And so there is going to be, at the end of this week, another adjustment on the student numbers. And it's going to be an adjustment in the denominator such that we are likely to subtract some numbers from the denominator, mainly because that these students are just not going to be here. And we won't know that until the final student census is authenticated by the registrar's office. So that's taking place this week. And there's about 1,800 to 2,000 students sort of in play. And we think that that number will become smaller, and then we will incorporate them into the nose, and all of those students then will be required to have routine testing if they do not secure a vaccination. And so we suspect that the actual number is going to go up to probably 92%, 93%. And it's not necessarily because we had a huge amount of new vaccinated students. It's mainly because the denominator got smaller. But we thought that we would be working within that 88 to 94% range, and that was a good piece of information, even though it was not absolutely precise. Being a numbers guy myself, I appreciate the sensitivity of having numbers that either you don't understand or understand all the assumptions that led to those numbers, or that they might be in error. I'm very confident, in these numbers with the assumptions that are being made. Well, one thing that we wanted to do is to double check to make sure that the information that students are testing is in fact real. So we have been doing audits each week, a certain number of students. The very first time we did that, we audited about 600 student records randomly and validated whether or not they had uploaded their cards and or validated through checking at the North Carolina Health and Human Services. We had a greater than 95% verification, and we've been doing that every week since with a smaller number. We're auditing randomly 100 students a week, and those numbers have all exceeded 95% authenticity. And so those that are not authenticated might be out of state or some other reason why we could not get definitive information, but does not necessarily imply a fraudulent claim. And so we feel pretty good about the students' numbers. The last week's audit demonstrated 99% authenticity. And so we feel that we're in pretty good shape there.
I think that's great. Thank you so much. I just wanted to follow up. I think that explanation is super clear and super helpful. And I think what I would like to ask is that kind of context is pushed out to the campus community, because we are a data-driven university. We all are sort of looking at the information. And I think that kind of explanation of why the numbers had changed will only strengthen people's trust in the data that they are being given about what is happening this semester. So I'd like to ask if there's a way to push some of that out. And I think Phil or Jen also mentioned something like that in the chat. So I would strongly encourage something be pushed out to just clarify things. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to Chancellor Guskiewicz. I realize you have to head out to another meeting. So I just wanted to thank you for your time. As always, we really appreciate it. And these updates are always really helpful. So
I want to thank all of you for what you do. And Kira, thank you for that question, and Phil for your comment in the text. You're right. We can do a better job of clarifying that, because we want people to trust these numbers. And when they go that direction, I agree, it does seem a little odd. So we'll do better. And thanks for all you do. I got to jump into this call real quick.
Thanks, Kevin.
Have a great day.
Bob, if you have a couple seconds, we still have a couple lingering hands. We're going to try and get through these last couple of questions so we can get to our special presenters.
Sure.
Matt, you are next.
Yeah, good morning. In the interest of time, it's more of a Becky question, so I'll just defer my question to the HR section.
All right, if you could re-raise your hand, then that would be great. James, you were next.
Yes, I would like to know how accurate are the numbers for the vaccines and facility services, because if they got to self-identify, a lot of those facility service workers, they don't use computers. They don't have access to computers all the time. So how accurate are the numbers for staff?
I'm not sure I understand. In terms of percent vaccinated out of
Yes.
that unit?
Yes.
Well, I'll defer to Kathy. I think Kathy has collects all of that data systematically. Kathy?
Yes, so we are just looking at the percentages from aggregate data level. And so we don't actually look at it by the unit level. So we are not looking like for facilities or energy services, or even down to like housekeeping versus the plumbing shop. So we are actually not doing that because we're really just interested in the overall number. But in terms of whether or not someone can add it via their computer, we did try to make it mobile friendly so that people with smartphones could also upload. And I realize not everyone has a smartphone either, but if there are needs where there's certain units that need help, with the entry, we're happy to coordinate that. So if there is a need in facilities, I can work with Darius, Dixon, and see if we can set something up.
I think that would be great, Kathy, because I know we heard from Kevin that Dr. Cohen and Dr. Barson did some outreach to some units about the vaccine. I think it would be helpful to maybe see which departments and units they went to, because I mean, for us to be able to further advocate for increased reporting and vaccination status, I mean, it would be helpful to know kind of department level, where do we need to boost those levels? And I think James's point is well taken, that a lot of folks in some of the departments like housekeeping and facilities who don't sit at a desk per se may need kind of some more outreach as far as kind of some setup time where they can sit at a computer and upload their vaccination status. So,
Well, they did come and speak to the housekeepers. The doctors did come and talk about the vaccine. That was a good thing. But however, a lot of those people in there don't use computers. And so somebody needs to get with them, to show them how to do it. And I think your vaccination rates would increase. So.
Thank you. That's a great piece of information. Kathy, is it possible to push out a telephone number? Or one thing we want to do, James, is to make sure that we preserve the identity of the individual. And so we're trying to make sure that we don't violate any protected status here. And a lot of people are very sensitive about their medical records and consider vaccinations as a part of their medical records. So that's why we're doing everything in the aggregate. But you raise a point that I don't think that we've adequately addressed yet. And so, Kathy, I don't know, is there a mechanism that people could provide that information anonymously and provide it into your registry without a computer?
Yeah, there might be a way to do that. I mean, we are trying to verify with an image of the vaccine card. So that would be a little hard to do. Like I said, I can follow up with Darius Dixon and Herb Richmond, and just to try to figure out if we could maybe do like an in-person. I mean, we can have EHS personnel do it. That all have HIPAA compliance and things like that. So maybe we'll try to troubleshoot how we can get more people to do that might not have access to computers.
I think that would be helpful, and I think we could even partner with Becky's team, because they do a lot of outreach around open enrollment to come out to certain units and have kind of set sessions where they can sign up on a computer and have folks around to help them. And obviously that's personal health kind of type of information as well. So there are kind of other similar circumstances that we could kind of piggyback off those efforts.
Great.
Teresa, you're next up, and I think that's the last question I see.
Yes, actually, it's kind of a comment related to what the provost was just talking about. I've actually had an employee say to me that they are vaccinated, but they are not going to register or confirm their vaccination because they feel like it's a HIPAA violation to do that. So I just wanted to put that out there and mention that, because I think you have a lot of people that are probably feeling that way and maybe not reporting their information that are indeed vaccinated. So just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Bob, for coming and for all of these helpful updates. We appreciate both your and Kevin's time, and we always love seeing you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to see all of you too. Thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing. Good to see you. Have a good week.
All right, next up, we have some special presentations. First up, we have Dennis Schmidt, who is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Institutional Privacy, and CISO. I'm not sure what that acronym stands for, but I'm sure you can let us know, Dennis. Thanks for coming out today.
Thanks, and let me share my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see that. Technology is always difficult, even for us technologists. The CISO is Chief Information Security Officer, by the way. I was asked to come and talk about phishing and maybe some tips to help people to not get hooked by phishing. So I put together a little presentation called Don't Take the Bait. And if I can get this thing to work, there we go. So phishing is still a problem. We've heard about phishing for years. I think, our greatest threat of all the things we do and all the threats out there. Phishing is still number one, at least on my list. And so we put a lot of effort into battling phishing. And the attacks against education are increasing significantly. Checkpoint Software has reported that it's up 29% worldwide, 17% in the US. Each organization averages 443 attacks per week. We probably get more than that. Ransomware, we see a lot in the news about ransomware. Those attacks are on the rise. The average school ransomware attack that's successful costs the institutions $3.78 million. And that's, I think that figure is very realistic. We still fall for phishing messages. We have started conducting simulated phishing campaigns where we send out simulated phishing messages to people on campus and collect the statistics. And for those who actually fall for the phish, there's a little training session at the end to remind them that. But you can see from the stats, we're averaging about 40% of the faculty and staff that get a phishing message click on the link, and 30% of them actually provide their ID and password. That's very concerning. IT staff, we're just as vulnerable. And these numbers are concerning as well. 24% of the IT staff clicked on the link, 8% provided credentials. Now those numbers are for the second time around. The first, we actually phished every single IT person on campus. And the first time around, the numbers were closer to what you see for faculty and staff. But once we got the training in place for them and we had presentations about it, a couple of months later, we phished them all again and we got lower numbers, but it still had 8% of the people that provided credentials. So phishing has evolved over the years. Back in the old days, and put the air quotes on around old days, that's probably about 10 years ago or so. The phishers would just do a generic message and they'd send out literally millions of messages. And if they got a fraction of a percentage of people to click on that message, that was still a pretty good take. But over time, they've evolved, and the phishing messages now are becoming very targeted. So when you get a phishing message, you are likely the specific target of that message. And we've seen the makeup of the messages change accordingly. This is off of our website. It's a little bit out of date, need to update it, but some of the stuff is still the same. So some telltale signs, a sense of urgency. You're going to see a subject line or the message that says, hey, you need to verify your account within the next 24 hours or you're going to lose access. Some sense of urgency, you got to do something right now. The Bad grammar, we still see a lot of that, but not as much as before. They're getting better English speakers to draft messages that are pretty believable. Again, the out of context sentences, that goes along with the bad grammar. If you see a message that just doesn't seem to make sense, chances are it's a bad one. And in bad links, you'll see, they call them hyperlinks. You'll see one message, but when you roll over it, the URL is totally different. Last thing I'll talk about on this slide is the from line. You're going to see this theme throughout my talk today, is to look at the from line. And when I talk about look at the from line, what I'm talking about is the entire line, not just the name. Look at the email address. And in probably 90 to 95% of the cases, just looking at the from line can tell you if it's a bad message or not. Again, focus on look at the from line. So phishing messages may look like they come from somebody you know. It could be a friend, a coworker, it could be your bank, the chancellor, and that's the whole concept of phishing messages, is try to trick you into thinking it's coming from a familiar source. You want to look at the entire from line. So expand out the email address so that you see the email address in addition to the name. The way you do that in Outlook is you right click on the message, it'll open a contact card and it'll give you the information on the email address. The iPhone doesn't show the email address by default. You just touch on the name and it will expand out. I think the Androids work in a similar fashion. Things you want to look for is this a UNC address? Is this, if you're expecting a message from your boss, is he sending it from he or she sending it from a UNC address? And we see a lot of them that end in unc.edu. There's others that end in .orgs and things like that. But in general, these are email addresses that you're familiar with. Be on the lookout for addresses that are spelled slightly differently. An example here is, apple.com could be apple1e.com. At first glance, it looks like apple.com, but again, these are all aimed at fooling you. Impersonation attempts is probably one of our bigger threats. And we've seen a number of these that are successful on campus. And basically, the phisher is attempting to pose as somebody you know. And this is a form of high-tech mugging. I'll step back a second. The phishers study us. They go out online. There's a lot of information about us out there. They can figure out what our jobs are. They can figure out our organizational structure. They know who our supervisors are. And so we will see cases where an administrative assistant, so I use ITS as an example. So Mike Barker is the CIO. His executive assistant is Gwen Moore. The attackers in cases may research and find that Gwen Moore is Mike's executive assistant. So they will craft a message and create a free email address that looks like Mike. So it might be mike.barker.unc.edu@gmail.com. They'll send it to Gwen and say something effective. Hey, Gwen, you got a minute? And Gwen, said, sure. And they'll say, well, I need you to do something for me. I'm stuck in a meeting. They won't let us use cell phones in meeting. My niece has got a birthday party coming up, and I really need you to go pick up some iTunes cards, gift cards for me, and I'll pay you back once when I get out of the meeting. But I really need those. And then what I need you to do is scrape the numbers off the back, take a picture of them, and send them to me. Gwen, trying to please the boss, says sure and goes out and does that. Now that may sound a little strange, but that has happened over and over again on our campus. And people that fall for this, they lose their own personal money in the process. And the bank cards won't refund you because that's you made the purchase and sent it off to basically to the phishers. And again, looking at the front line in those cases, would stop that. And an example, if Gwen looked at the front line and saw that was from Gmail and not from a UNC address, that should have raised flags. We see other similar attacks aimed at the financial folks. So we've actually had a case in the ITS where our administrative officer or finance officer got an email, claimed to be from the CIO, and said, "Hey, I need you to wire some money for me." Now, fortunately, our finance person caught on it right away and knew it was a bad message, but those type of attacks have also been successful on this campus. So the threat is real and it's happening. Again, looking at the front line can tell you that that's a problematic message. And ways to also to help for Outlook users, both for the desktop and on mobile clients, there are some warning signs to tell you that you're talking to somebody outside of our environment, and might give you clues that the person you're talking to may not be who you think it is. So these are two snapshots. The one on the left is a snapshot of Outlook for the desktop. And what will happen is if you reply to a message or you add an addressee that's not within the unc.edu domain, you'll get this little alert. It could be in blue or red, depending on how you're configured. It'll say, "Hey, just to let you know, you're talking to somebody outside of our organization." The mobile client for iPhone and for Androids, you get actually a better banner. It pops up and just says, "Hey, these are external recipients that you're talking to." So again, keep an eye out for those and don't ignore those kind of warnings. And we're still vulnerable, and even just from a system side. So the impersonation attacks are really at a personal level. But we still get accounts compromised. We implemented multi-factor authentication, made it mandatory for everybody just under 4 years ago, and that has driven our number of compromised accounts to near zero. Before we implemented MFA, we were getting several hundred compromised accounts per month, and since then, we now average 1 or 2 a year. So that has been a very dramatic change. However, those 1 or 2 are very painful, because especially if they have sensitive data, we have to get forensics teams to look at those accounts. We have to report those to Health and Human Services, and each of those attacks can cost us literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to resolve. And the way they're getting in, so the 2-factor was to block somebody, even if they get your credentials, from getting in. But in all of those attacks, we've seen the same process. The payloads and stuff are a little bit different. But this is a timeline from an actual attack we had a couple of years ago. In this case, where the attacker sends a phishing message, in that particular case, it had an attachment. In the attachment was a link. Or it said, "I need you to download a OneDrive document," and they click on the document, and it came up with a login screen. So the user said, "Well, I want to get that document," and the user typed in the credentials into the login screen and hit submit. The phisher is waiting live on the other end of the line, and as soon as the person hits submit on the fake login, the phisher, the attacker, gets those credentials and immediately tries to log in from where they're at. And when they log in, the credentials are correct, so it gets them through the first step. The next step is it pops up with asking for the second factor. And the criminal selects the push mode, and so the user on the other end who just submitted the credentials, the user gets an alert saying it's 2-factor, you need to accept to get in. Well, the user thinks they just logged in. And so seeing this prompt, it does not seem unusual because they just logged in or think they did. And so they hit they accept the push, and now the attacker's in the account, and it's game over. So there's ways that we can defend against that. And it really revolves around situational awareness. And situational awareness is really just understanding what your current state is. What are you doing right now? And here's some examples. If I'm reading my email then I'm already logged into my Office 365 or Microsoft 365. If I'm asked to, if I try to open another Office 365 document, I shouldn't have to log in to read that document because I'm already logged in. So if I click on an email, if I open an email, and if that email takes me to an Onion login screen for any reason, it's likely bogus. Now, there are exceptions. So for example, if the link is going to take you to Connect Carolina and you haven't logged in yet, it could ask for credentials. But the key to this is if you get an email that says log in, that should raise red flags and you should check it out and don't just automatically log in. Another thing is if you do a legitimate login and it's going to require the MFA prompt, that prompt should come back immediately. I mean, in less than a second. If it's going to take more than a couple of seconds, you need to be suspicious and check it out. And we had a recent example where the attacker actually made multiple attempts to try to get in and get the prompt, and the user was busy, didn't see a text, didn't see, finally got a phone call because the attacker was trying different methods, finally got a phone call to acknowledge, and the person acknowledged the account or the login and let the person in. But there was a significant delay between the time they had entered credentials and actually got the prompt. If you get more than one prompt, that's really a danger sign, and something's going on. You just need to kind of stop in your tracks at that point. So again, the additional tips to protect yourself. I'll just repeat, if any email takes you to login page, just stop and think about it before you react and provide the credentials, because there's a good chance that it's a bogus account or bogus message. Again, look at the from line. See if the message has some of the other telltale traits of urgency and is the and on the bullet, is it normal for the sender to be contacting you in this way? And as an example, if you met somebody at a conference 3 years ago and you exchanged emails and they're now in your address book and you have never heard from this person in the past 3 years, and you suddenly get an email from this person, they're asking for some specific information, that should be a red flag, meaning somebody's contacting you out of the blue that's not expected, and there may be nefarious reasons that they're doing that, or that an attacker is actually doing that. So the bottom line, I think, is just trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, if you're going through a process and the message is there's something weird about the message, if something doesn't feel right, trust your gut. Back up and take a breath and evaluate the situation. If you're confused and say, well, I'm not sure, you can always call the service desk at 962-HELP, and they're happy to walk you through it. Also, we want you to report phishing messages. The good news is that we've got a change coming out on September 15th that you'll all see. Our past way of reporting phishing messages was a little cumbersome, and you had to forward it as an attachment, and most people don't know how to do that easily. And then there was a lot of manual work on the back end. Well, Microsoft now has a button to be able to just click the button and report it as a phishing message. That report automatically goes to Microsoft. We are totally out of the picture on that. It goes to Microsoft. They evaluate it. If they determine it's a phishing message, they will yank that message from everybody's mailbox that may have gotten it in our tenant, and they'll flag that as a worldwide as a bad message. So it's really good, strong capability, and it's really easy for people to use. But it'll be a button that's just going to automatically show up in your Outlook. It works on the mobile devices as well, and you'll click on the report message and click phishing. You had a couple other options as well, but we're really excited about this one coming out, and we've been testing it for a while, and all of you should see it coming September 15th. So what if I get hooked? What do I do? Well, first thing, if you submitted credentials and realize that, hey, I shouldn't have done that, immediately go to the onion.unc.edu and change your password. Do it right. Don't hesitate, because as we've seen, the phishers are waiting on the other end and they're ready to act right now. call the service desk and let them know, because we need to get in and take a look at it, and one, to see if there's sensitive data, and we have to preserve some forensics information, for reporting later on. And we also can help clean up your account. Sometimes when they get in, they do things to your rules on the back end and things like that. And so we have some processes to clean that mess up as well. And we don't take any of these, there's no punitive things or anything like that. Our goal is to make you safe, and we will fix you up if you get stuck by that. Oops. And that's it. Questions? I haven't looked at the, let me bring over the chat, see if there's questions in the chat. If there's time for that, are there time for questions?
There's some time. I think we've got a raised hand. Joseph, you had a question.
I was just wondering if we are preparing for other kinds of scamming. Like I was reading some articles, I think it was like last year, about there was a company in the UK that got deep faked for to like 200 grand. And then there's some other like issues with like people getting around two-factor authentication. I'm just wondering what like the university is doing to address like future endeavors when normally we think of phone calls as safe.
So we use a process that's continuous improvement. So we are constantly looking at what we do, what our capabilities are, and making improvements and adjustments as we go. Some things that we've done here within the last year, for example, is we have subscribed to a service called Mandiant Managed Defense. And so what they've done, we have pushed out 22,000 agents across the campus that do a lot of close monitoring on endpoints. Many of you probably have that on your machine and don't know it, but it gives us advanced warning to attacks. They also have 4 appliances that evaluates all incoming and outgoing all incoming and outgoing traffic from our campus, and they give us advanced warning of either potential attacks or give us a quick warning of an actual attack. And that has been a very effective. We've blocked a number of attacks that could have been potentially bad that service gave us a heads up and really did well for us. We also just recently purchased so what they call the A5 Step Up, which gives us a lot more capability within our email system to be able to detect phishing messages, to block, to protect, give us more protection against the 2-step workaround. Also can give us, do what they call a sandbox for attachments to make sure that they don't contain any bad payloads. Also can, we're testing out the rewriting the links so that it checks all the links in your email messages to ensure that they're not taking you to bad sites. So we're continuously improving, and because the threat landscape changes continuously. The phishers, we get one way to block them from something, they figure out another way to try to get in. MFA was highly effective, but then we started to see attempts to try to get around MFA, and they're getting better at that. So we have to keep trying things like what we're trying to be able to detect that Microsoft isn't quite so good at is, for example, if I'm logged in reading my email in Chapel Hill and somebody's trying to log in from Nigeria with my credentials, that should be a red flag to say, hey, I can't, not Superman, I can't fly that far that fast. So would block that kind of login. So we're really, again, continuing to try to expand those capabilities and make things safer.
Great. We had a few questions in the chat. If a UNC employee falls prey to any of these scams, how likely is it that IT becomes aware? And when IT is aware that UNC victim has been phished, are they always made aware that they were phished?
So if it's a successful attack, we aren't always aware. With 2-step, we usually are. That's a better indication. But there could be cases where somebody gets their credentials stolen, and the 2-step blocks them from getting into their email accounts, but then they can also try to use those credentials to try to get into other parts of campus, other areas that are not email related or Office 365 related. We have Duo in front of most of that. We also have Duo in front of our VPN, so we've got two-step in those areas. But Duo has kind of similar vulnerabilities where through social engineering, they could work their way around it. But again, it reduces our risk significantly, but it doesn't make it zero.
Speaking of Duo, somebody said, should I be concerned if it takes me 2 tries to get through my Duo? I'm going through Connect Carolina, for example, not a random link.
The question is, take you multiple tries to get through Duo?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be concerned from a security standpoint, but I'd be concerned about the serviceability of Duo. There's Teresa waving her hand. Go ahead, Teresa.
I was just going to say, Arlene, put in a ticket. We'll check it out for you. But it also depends on if you're connecting, if you're on a docking station, if you're wireless, your IP may change. You're an admin user, so you have to be on Eduroam or VPN to be able to get to your menus. And if you log in without that, it's going to affect that. So if you want us to check it out, please put a ticket in. We'll be happy to do it.
Great. And I think the last question I see in the chat, will you share these slides so we can share them with our colleagues?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Any other questions for Dennis before? No?
Yeah, I also make a pitch for, we have put together phishing presentations. So if you want us to come and give a more detailed presentation to your groups or organizations, we are more than happy to do that. We do that all the time. And the more we can do it, the more we can get the message out, the better.
Yes,
I would like to ask a follow-on question to one of the questions, and that is, if IT does become aware that there was any sort of a intrusion on a user, that maybe they clicked on the wrong link or whatever, how do they contact that UNC person to let them know, hey, we found that you were scammed?
So we obviously will contact the person if the account has been compromised. Sometimes we will have to what we call flush the account, where we have to kill the password and also kill any connections, because if they're connected from over Nigeria or China or someplace like that, we have to kill that account too to make sure that they're not doing anything. And then we will contact the user through whatever their contact information is to let that person know that somebody did get in their account. We will have some questions about the kind of information that person deals with. If it's someone that's in say a chemistry department or history department that doesn't deal with sensitive data as part of their job, in those cases we'll just kind of reset the password, help them check to make sure that there's no changes in the rules, and then put them back in business. If it's if it involves PHI or other sensitive information, we'll do a similar process, but then we will also capture a copy of the mailbox, a forensics copy of that, so that we can go in and do deep level forensic analysis. We don't go in and just read the emails. we don't have time for that. but we do need to know, what the attacker did when they were in the account. What messages did they look at? And we've recently added a capability to see those kind of details greater, which is helpful. And so that if we can prove it, an attacker didn't look at any sensitive data, then we don't have to report that to HHS. So, but that's the kind of things we'll have to look at if sensitive data is involved.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Dennis, so much for your presentation. It's always helpful. Phishing is a scary notion, so this is always really good information to hear. Next up, we have the Executive Director of the State Employees Association of North Carolina, Ardis Watkins, here to give us a legislative update. And I know we're all eagerly awaiting any details of potential, maybe LSIs or increases as a part of the budget. So Ardis, welcome. It's always good to see you. Thanks.
Thanks. I'm very honored to have an invitation to speak to this group ever. I really appreciate what y'all do. And I wish I had some solid, it's final kind of news, but that's not the way it's working on Jones Street, as pretty much per normal. I will tell you this. In the last few weeks, we have had some very in-depth conversations following up on the House budget. Obviously, the most recent of the two budgets was the House version, and the House put in nothing at first for non-EHR or non-faculty EHRA employees. And then we went back and said, you know, we have a real problem with this. Worked with leadership, ended up getting less than what everybody else was getting put in, but they put money in, and it was kind of odd. Instead of an average of 2.5 for each year, they did an average of 1.5 for each year for non-faculty EHRA, and then only took it up to 95,000 as a cutoff. Just these very odd parameters that weren't put on any of the other agencies or parts of university budgets. So we obviously took issue with that as well, tried to get an amendment on the House floor to fix that. Actually, the amendment on the House floor is what put it at 1.5. We couldn't get it all the way to 2.5. And so we're now in conference, since there's differences in the budget bill all over the place. Obviously, the bill was going to conference anyway. While it's been in conference, we have really heavily focused on the Senate side to try to make our case that there's absolutely no rational reason to put a salary cap on it for non-faculty EHRA employees, but it is also particularly disturbing to leave a group out when that group was left out the previous couple of years. When other folks got raises, folks who work in universities did not experience that same raise. So it's a year where, in our opinion, it needed to be a makeup call the other way, give more money to folks who work in the university system to acknowledge the fact that they were shut out of the budget previously. So I don't, at this point in time, I don't know if we'll get makeup money. I will tell you that on the Senate side, we've had a lot of debate over this with some of the leadership on the Senate side, and a lot of vigorous discussion. I think that, I'm more cautiously optimistic that we can move towards getting that fixed, at least get it to where everybody else had it, and hopefully get that salary cap of 95,000 taken out when the final budget comes out. But again, this is every few minutes. And of course, the Senate and the House and the governor are all talking amongst themselves about how much money is being spent. And there is a huge difference in philosophy between the House and Senate on the total amount that should be spent. And the Senate wants to spend a lot less than the House does. So you kind of have to layer that on top of the debate over whether it's okay to not give everyone the same raise. And so you've got a mess. We will keep plugging away at that, though. And, all the communication you can make by email, phone call, whatever, with members of the Appropriations Committee, the big chairs, as we call them, on the House and Senate sides, those are helpful things to do. And it puts a face to the issue, which is it's more difficult to shut people out when you talk to the actual people. And a lot of times people don't think legislators will care. It does. I mean, they're human beings at the end of the day. Those kind of things push buttons. So we would encourage you to do that, and we'll keep you informed. I know, we talk an awful lot with James. So, and I want to say a special thank you to James Holman while we're on this call, your own James Holman, because he has been, as always, very instrumental in making sure we get that message out at in the university system and at UNC particularly, that we've got to have people call, and we've got to ramp this effort up and put pressure on the legislature. And so James is one of those loyal grassroots folks and activists who I can call and know he's going to make your case to them. So I appreciate that. I also want to mention that, in the legislature, I can't remember if I talked to this particular group about this issue, but I know I talked to a subcommittee of this group about some bills, some very dangerous bills that were proposed in the legislature this year. And one of those bills would have allowed each university to cut the salaries of employees in times of financial distress for the university. So it could mean that the legislature gave the university system 5 cents less than they did in the last budget, and that would have triggered this authority to cut salaries in response to that. We were CENIC was very vigorously opposed to that. We do not believe in cutting salaries as a way to work your way out of budget difficulties. It certainly didn't seem like a good thing to us to almost encourage the legislature to not have to fully fund, at least to the rate it did in the past, because by making employee salaries the relief valve, you're putting something in place to get money. And when you're trying to do a state budget of $22 billion, you're going to take any money you can find. What we didn't want is that being employee salaries, because that is absolutely nonsensical. The only way I can tell you from just running the organization I run, that if that was on the table as an option for me, rather than making sure the budget stays balanced and that I can find ways to trim it when I need to, if I could just cut into my folks' salaries, that would not be a good thing to put on the table. I would hope I would never use it, but it shouldn't be an option. It should be the very last thing anyone would ever consider. So that was one thing that was a bill that really had legs. It went through the House, as a matter of fact, with that language in it. And we had to fight an all-out war on the other side to get that up. I'm sorry, it went through the Senate. I just misspoke. It went through the Senate that way, came over to the House, and we had to just absolutely it was a rough time. We got it stopped, and when that bill finally came out, some things the university system wanted, administrative changes, they wanted in legislation. They were in the bill, but the part about cutting anybody's salary as an option when there's budget difficulties was removed. And we're really excited about that. And we thank those of you. I know some folks from UNC were pretty active in calling, and it was a really important thing that you did. And the other piece was personnel files. There was a movement, again, it's the same bill that's been filed, I think, 4 times over the last 14 years, to make personnel files of anyone employed at the university system or in a state agency a public record if there is any kind of disciplinary action worded very broadly so as to mean anything. If it's a Post-it note that a supervisor puts in someone's personnel file that indicates, she's been late a lot, that would be something that would have been made public record to anyone who wanted it at any time. And so as an organization, we were concerned because at first, to be honest with you, I won't get into it, but the way it was written would have been unconstitutional. It would have deprived you of due process, simply of exercising all your administrative remedies when you want to fight something that you know to be patently false in your record. So they corrected that. They said, okay, well, now we've made it not unconstitutional. So now you can't have a problem with it. If you do, you have a problem with transparency. And where we came from on this is we actually want more transparency. And the folks who were not giving transparency that they were citing, they cited examples of dirty cops or teachers who might be abusing kids in the classroom. And then these folks get moved to other police departments or other schools. Really egregious examples, which would frighten anyone. And what struck me about that is that showed a profound lack of any understanding, first of all, of systemic and institutional and what that means, because you're probably not going to find something in personnel files if you've got, a police force where that kind of thing is taking place, where you've got cops doing bad things and people looking the other way. They're probably, and they end up getting moved to another police department. I doubt there was a lot of record keeping of that kind of behavior, just a guess. Again, it's overlooking the whole idea behind systemic and institutional racism or injustice. And so I felt like that was a really disingenuous argument. And what's going to happen is somebody sitting in a cubicle will be fishing every week to see what the person in the cubicle next to them might have done. And if I was going through a divorce and my childcare issues made me late a few times that month, that would have been a private thing between me and my supervisor that would have become public, just as an example of something that it's just, there was no real public, whenever you're going to weigh something that you do believe involves people's privacy rights, and you're talking about the government as an employer, you would obviously weigh the public interest versus the potential damage done. In this case, it seemed very clear that the potential damage done to individuals would be potentially very great. and the public interest was very small, because if somebody's doing something that rises to the level of any of the examples given, those would be situations where supervisors are required by law to report that behavior, not to put something in the file, stick it in a drawer, and never look at it again. So what we need to do is make sure if there are, if there's inappropriate usage of state money or any behavior that affects people's civil liberties, their freedom of their person, that those things are addressed appropriately through the law. But it took a lot to fight that one back, because the Press Association is the group that's been running that, had that bill run each time, and the Press Association had an awful, they inundated the market everywhere with the same op-eds on the piece, and tried to make it out that we were a big, awful union that was just trying to hide, to not be transparent and to hide all of this awful behavior by state employees, which was just silly. It was trying to make people fearful and step on people's rights in the process. But at the end of the day, again, I'm proud that with the help of folks like y'all who called and sent emails and said, my rights should matter here, we were able to fight that back as well. So that's pretty much the legislative wrap up that I've got. I want to say that Scenic is really proud to be sponsor of the Chancellor's Cup on, I think, the 21st of September. And so we're hoping to see people there.
29th.
29th. Yeah, that's what I get for trying to give a date. It's not my forte. So September 29th, we'll be really excited to see people. It was really fun to be there 2 years ago. Obviously, we were not there last year. Had hoped to be there as the sponsor last year. So we have a lot of visiting to make up for with folks from the university system. I'm happy to take any questions or anything else that y'all want to talk about.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ardis, for those updates. Any questions for Ardis? Phil?
Hi, Ardis. Good to see you again. I guess coming from the EHRA non-faculty side of things, I guess I'm wondering, and the messaging that we've got from Scenic around this has been sort of mystifying, like it's not clear why this group was set out, but among the rationales that you might have heard for folks sort of singling out EHRA non-faculty employees in this budget, I guess I'm wondering if you can share any of the logic that folks have expressed around this before, because I can only imagine it comes from either malice or ignorance. And I'm trying to sort of weigh like what kinds of responses to the various messages that you might have seen would be most effective.
I mean, that's a great question, Phil. It's mystifying to us because generally around the legislature, what you would hear in the last decade is, it's the university faculty. We don't like them. And it was ironic to me because after hearing that for all these years, and the last time they were talking about a budget 2 years ago, we were fighting for everybody to be included, nobody left out. And the group they wanted to leave out then were the faculty. So I don't get it. Why? Now I'll tell you this, there's part of the story I left out that was, not surprising, but it might be to folks who don't work down there every day, because of how much arm twisting we were doing to get that amendment, to get folks added in some way so we could put the issue in controversy going into conference with the Senate. There was a little bit of, there was a staffer who made the comment, Scenic wants these, non-faculty EHRA people in so bad, we're going to put them in. And that's when they put them in at 1.5 each year, but it'll come out of the state health plan. And sure enough, they reduced the employee contribution to the state health plan by the amount of money they were putting in for non-faculty EHRA raises. Now go explain that one to me, other than they were trying to let us know if you're going to really twist our arms, we're going to come back at you. And the reason they knew that was a weak point for us is we had been yelling and screaming about the cost to the state health plan for prevention, treatment, and diagnosis, the testing of COVID. Obviously, we got billions upon billions of dollars from the federal government for COVID. And they said, use this for the expenses, the extraordinary expenses that were only caused by COVID. That's what we want you to do with the money. So of course, we immediately said, y'all don't forget to put the money back in the state health plan that it is spent on COVID. If you don't, folks who have the state health plan will find themselves with higher deductibles, out-of-pocket maximums, copays, because there's no way to keep funding, to keep the system going without some changes in the benefit structure unless you put the money back. Well, they didn't put the money back after, in last year's budget, the little mini budget thing they did. And then this year, the governor was about to spend a chunk of the federal money. And we said, don't forget, there's this health plan money, because everybody told us, the legislature, which is run by Republicans, and the governor's office, run by a Democrat, they had all told us, hey, we didn't put the money in at first when you asked, because we were waiting for the next round of federal money and we're going to put it in then. Well, the next round came around. So we said, put the money in now, because it's hundreds of millions of dollars. And this is literally going to have to come out of state employees' pockets. Well, the thing is, we can't put that first amount back in, because the second big batch of federal money we got only allowed us to go back to a certain point in time with expenditures. So basically $99 million, nobody could put back. So the governor's office said, we really want to, but we can't. And the legislature said, we really want to, but we can't. The governor put back the piece, after the date the federal government had put as the deadline. And since then, we have been pressuring the legislature, then you put it back out of general fund money. If we're not using the COVID money, you used it on something else instead of this. This is about the most direct use of COVID money I could imagine, spending it on the health plan for the state employees. And so we've been in this battle over what the legislature would put in. And I think they thought it was kind of cute to say, well, Scenic wanted this health plan money put back. We'll just use that for the raises for non-faculty EHRA. I do believe we have that piece settled on the Senate side. We'll get the money put back in the health plan. And again, we're focusing on the non-faculty EHRA raise to be at least equal to everybody else and not to have that salary cap.
Great. Thanks, Ardis. So next up, we have our human resources update, and Becky and her fantastic team are here. I think we also have an update on open enrollment, which is set to happen in October as always. Becky, welcome.
Becky, you're muted.
Oh no.
20 some months in, I'll figure that out yet. Hello again, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. I want to echo the Chancellor and the Provost in thanking you for all that you're doing. And I want to thank Ardis for giving the legislative update. That's one big piece that you're getting it more close to the source than I usually provide you. That will also mean that you're one step closer to hearing from the real experts this morning, and you don't have to listen to me for a great length of time. As you might expect, we're as eager as anyone to find out the details about the budget for all of the reasons that Ardis suggests, but then also a number of things that I talked about last time, in addition, in terms of some of the things the system office may move forward and what it means for lifting the requirements under the OSBM memo about our limitations on being able to do some additional adjustments and or hiring. Beyond that, there's no doubt just a ton going on with the return of students to campus and all the work that you all are doing every day to ensure the ongoing safety of the community. I know the Chancellor and the Provost talked about at great length about vaccines and about testing. We continue to work on that. As of the 15th of September, the requirement for employees to attest or be tested goes in play. And we're working with our colleagues at the Carolina Testing Center and ITS and others to coordinate the details so that process can happen. We will use Hall Pass, very similar to the way that students are notified about their requirement to test, and that is where employees will get their results. Managers and supervisors will have no requirements or obligations to supervise or authorize testing in any way. They don't need to check anybody's phone to verify that they've been vaccinated. They don't need to ask. They have no role in that process. And that is for very much the reasons we've talked about earlier in terms of testing and vaccines more generally. People don't want to have to share that information with their supervisor, and we're not expecting them to do so, but rather this process is set up accordingly. In terms of encouraging people to vaccinate, we shared the numbers earlier. I noticed one of the questions in the chat was, what are you doing to try to increase the numbers beyond asking us? And I think it's fair to say it takes all of us. And it's not just what are we doing or what are you doing, but what collectively can we do together to encourage people to be vaccinated? I'm coming to you today very specifically to ask members of the forum in your districts to talk to people in your districts. We know from the employee engagement survey that people take information from the center and they value it, and the trust is working its way up, and depending on who it comes from, the trust levels vary. We get that, I understand. But we also know that trust is greatest at the local level. So I'm asking you to talk to all employees in your districts and encourage them to get vaccinated, share with them the vaccine site, also remind them that if they choose not to get vaccinated, the testing requirement will go in place in September. We're not asking anybody to do a heavy-handed thing, but make sure people in your unit are knowledgeable about what the plans are moving forward. We're also, as the Provost and the Chancellor outlined earlier, doing some direct targeted efforts in some areas. Kathy talked a little bit about the data, and there are some challenges to, if people submit the information, it's intended to be separate from all of us. And for the reasons that I think Teresa mentioned earlier, some employees don't want to give it to us. So I don't actually have the department breakdown of who has what sort of thing. I don't get access to that. And there's a reason for that, because if there's any estimation that I suddenly am getting knowledge of somebody's vaccination status, that concerns people. So we're actually trying to take a more blanket approach. So we're making some targeted efforts. We've done some things in housekeeping and facilities. We've got some follow-ups happening even during this meeting. There's been some email traffic about, can we ensure that there's a mechanism for people to sign up if they're not regularly using computers, as James talked about. Housekeeping and facilities are two big units, but they're not our only SHRA units. So we've got specific requests out to the deans and vice chancellors, asking them to send messages to their individual units. We've got that asking them to talk to supervisors about sending messages out. The specific request to all of you. We are going to try to do some things at the testing sites so that when people go get tested, the easiest way to avoid continuing to have to come test with us is to go get vaccinated. How can we help you with that? We're going to continue to look for other ways. If you have other ideas, we're certainly open to them, but not all of these have to originate in the center. They can originate locally at your unit level with all of you. But the more we can do collectively to ensure that those who wish to be vaccinated or who are uncertain about vaccination but need more and better information, that we can provide that, let's do that. For those who do not wish to be vaccinated, we need to ensure that they know that the requirement for testing will go in place on the 15th. Is that helpful in terms of what we're doing? So I talked about testing sites. Oh, the one other thing we're looking at, though it's complicated for a whole lot of reasons, is exploring the notion of incentives and what incentives would look like. That's difficult for a whole bunch of reasons, but it is something that we're having conversations about. So more to come on that if that pans out any further. Does that answer the question of somebody who asked what we were doing?
Yes, but I think there was a follow-up question. Someone in a group on campus has told me they have a coworker who is telling their coworkers they are going to refuse to be tested. What's the appropriate response to hearing something like that from a coworker? Is that something that should be reported to HR? And this person asked me that what they should do, and I have no idea. And that kind of speaks to like the question around enforcement and what that's going to look like for this new requirement starting September 15th.
Yep. So just like it happens on the student side, if the hall pass those notifications are not followed through on, employees will be contacted, reminded, oh, you were supposed to get vaccinated. Have you done so? If not, it is a condition of employment. So there will be disciplinary, there are options for disciplinary action. It depends on the employee type of how that goes, but it will fall, you know, for an SHR employee, it generally starts with a pre-disciplinary conference or a conversation and then a pre-disciplinary conference, you know, condition of employment. So it becomes a status of, or the type of employee then determines how the steps go. What the outcomes of that will be, I think, are still to be determined. You know, do we really want, I mean, I don't know that we would go immediately to termination, but there are probably steps along the way, and we want to make sure that we're managing that process. So environmental health and safety will get the data and then work with HR to manage that accordingly. Because then it becomes, once the initial, at least this is, we're still talking through the logistics of how it passes for the, how the information passes out of hall pass and back up. You know, in the student side, it goes to student affairs to be able to address non-compliance. On our side, we think it'll go to EHS and then to us, though we're still working through the details on that.
Teresa, your hand's up. Oh, sorry, and Jeanette, you.
I was not in order.
Okay. Gotcha. Teresa, your hand's up.
I just wanted to ask Becky, Becky, for clarity, the condition of employment requirement is participating in the testing program if you are not vaccinated.
Correct.
Not certifying that you are vaccinated. That's how you get exempted from having to participate in the program.
Correct.
Okay.
You have to do one or the other. And if you choose not to do either, so you don't certify and you don't test, then you're subject to some sort of discipline. But we're not requiring vaccinations. It's just you have to, if you don't vaccinate, you have to test. And if you don't test, that becomes the problem. Yep.
Thank you. That's what I understood. I just wanted it clear. Thank you.
Yes.
Ellie, your hand's up. Oh, sorry, Liz.
I think Elizabeth was first.
Yeah.
Ellie, you go ahead if it's a COVID-related question, because mine is not actually COVID-related. Okay, thanks. It's very quick. It's just I'm just sharing a concern from a colleague regarding the temporary employees not have access to leave for reaction to a vaccine. I realize that's probably not something that, I assume it's system level. And thanks for Brandy for pointing out the policy. This colleague just mentioned that depending on, you know, temporary employees, it may be a reason why some of them have chosen not to get vaccinated if they don't have access to leave for a reaction. She does not know whether or not this is actually a thing that's influencing people's decision, but just a concern that was raised that I heard.
Totally fair. It is a system level thing because they're not, temporary employees are not benefits earning. So it's not something we can provide as a benefit. My encouragement to those folks is to have supervisors encourage people to get vaccinated on a Friday afternoon or late in the day so that they have as much time as possible. I mean, obviously people don't want to be ill on the weekend, and the hope is that the vaccine will not provide negative impacts, but anything we can do as supervisors and managers to support people who wish to get the vaccine, in doing so, I think we ought to.
Great. Liz?
Okay, I have a question from somebody in my workplace, and it actually reflects back on all the things that come up all the time related to our workforce and people leaving and people needing to take on additional responsibilities and the pause we have in rehiring, blah, 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 all those things. But I'm going to go ahead and post her question here in the chat. Becky, I realize this is something that you and I might talk about separately from the employee forum, but I do want to go ahead and, represent what the question was in case other people are interested as well. Her situation is that she's taking on another position. She's not done with some work in her positions he's leaving, and she was asked if she could continue to contribute, and she came into conflict with the rules that say you can't have 2 jobs, 2 pay streams, 2 whatevers. And so I just posted her question in the chat. This has to do with a short-term transition where she would continue to do some work contracted by the 2nd department.
Yeah, this strikes me as something that's a pretty specific example and is probably worthy of some discussion outside, because I don't want to, it's not something I know enough about, and I know some of my colleagues are on the call, but 2, I also generally, when we're talking about dual employment of some sort or secondary employment, there's some really specifics to each individual case that warrant additional discussion. So I think it's worth having a conversation offline, and probably Link, I don't know if you want to chime in about who that would be. And I don't know if this is an SHRA or an EHRA employee, but we can target the right person to make sure that you're connected appropriately.
Thanks for providing me some direction where I can take this question.
Yeah, the best person to talk with about any issues related to dual or additional employment would be Noreen Montgomery. She's the Senior Director of Employment Staffing. And I can give her a heads up on this question and that you likely are going to be reaching out. She'd be happy to hear more about the situation and then advise accordingly.
Thank you so very much. All right, back to COVID.
Matt, your question's next.
Yeah, good morning. My question is actually not about COVID. So this is another issue that's come up for the Personnel Issues Committee, dealing with career advancement. So now that the university has rolled out a talent management system, Carolina Talent, what are the next steps that HR is planning for improving career development and advancement to align with Strategic Plan Initiative 3.2?
That's a fair question, Matthew. We have been working particularly with our partners across campus to start putting additional content into Carolina Talent. The first line effort of that has been compliance related training. So working with our partners in ITS and environmental health and safety, and a bunch of training that many employees across campus need to take in order to meet compliance requirements. And the thought is that if we put some of the compliance training in Carolina Talent, we can track who's done it and follow up on it far easier than each of those units sort of asking somebody to track the data behind the scenes and follow up with Phil Edwards 16 times because he's failed to take his security training in for ITS or whatever it may be. Sorry, Phil, I don't mean to pick on you, but the hope is that we can start with that. And then there have been a number of conversations with other units that do professional development in some capacity or another to start moving some of those into the platform. I will be honest with you, there is a fair amount of movement with a relatively small team making this happen, but some of the challenge with COVID has been getting our partners across campus to be able to have enough bandwidth to pay attention and contemplate moving some of this content while also trying to navigate the workforce, the transitions, the pivots we've made. So I think we all hope that perhaps this might be a little bit faster than it has, but we are seeing really remarkable numbers of people actually using the content that is available in Carolina Talent, whether it's the LinkedIn learning programs or some of the content that's already there. But the hope is that we can continue to build it and make it more robust moving forward. And we have partnered with learning leads in every major academic unit to help us begin to think about what things might be built into that and ways that we might move content and start to prioritize those. But I actually would have to defer to Vicki Bradley and her team together with Mark Hoppola and the Organizational Leadership and Professional Development Group, because they've been sort of driving that piece. But I did present to the Personnel Committee some numbers of users a while back. I'm happy to work to see if we can get some additional updated numbers on that, but it's moving. Certainly we invite feedback from those who are using the system moving forward. You'll also note that this year during performance management, we did also put in play the idea that people could start assigning professional development through Carolina Talent. And that will be something that will be more fully rolled out in next year's performance review process. Link, have I missed anything on that?
You've not, you've covered it.
Does that answer your question, Matt?
Mostly. One quick follow-up is what options is HR considering outside of Carolina Talent? So an LMS, learning management system, content management system only gets you so far in terms of holistic career advancement and development. So, you know, I'm just thinking about the roadmap of if I'm a first line employee and I want to become a first line supervisor, so some development opportunities may be classes I can sign up for and take through Carolina Talent or some other similar website. And some of it may not be. Some of it may be developing relationships with stakeholders or mentoring programs or something else. So just thinking holistically about career advancement development.
Yeah, I think those are exactly right. And Carolina Talent is one effort we've made as part of that strategic initiative. It's not the only one. And some of those things are things that HR and the center can do. A lot of it is driven by individual supervisors and individual employees being able to identify what the next steps they want to take are and then what some of the next options are. We're beginning to talk with broader groups of people about how we might navigate for that. I think it's fair to say that our system is not set up with an obvious, I want to get from here to here, and these are the 9 steps I need to take there. That's not the way the structure is built. And that's not really, we're trying to figure out how we ensure that overall strategic initiative, but that initiative is not HR's alone. That belongs to a whole host of people to think about, and what a growth in a unit looks like in one place may look different in another, particularly if you want to stay in a health arena versus an academic arena. So we can start building some of the template lines for where we want to go, but we also need input from others about how we might build some of those options in. And then one of the things we've talked about, I think I've mentioned to this group before, you know, right now we know that or one of the conversations I've been having with Kevin is the tuition remission program has been really beneficial to a lot of employees, particularly employees who want to finish a degree or get an advanced degree. It's not the same for all employee types. And there are some employees in our trades, for example, who right now, if they want to get advanced experience in, say, something like HVAC, they may take a class at Durham Tech. They pay out of their own pocket. And if it's something the supervisor approves, they may get reimbursed for it. So I would like to see us come up with a more, my proposal that Kevin and I have been talking about, and maybe because we have a chancellor of the UNC system or president of the UNC system who comes from the community college side, would be open to having a broader discussion about how we make a tuition remission program available that avails itself of the community college system as well as the UNC system. So we're looking at things like that, Matt. But as you might imagine, the back office structure between the community college system and the UNC system isn't the same. So it's not as easy to put in play as the tuition remission program is for the UNC system, but we are engaged in early discussions about it.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Chrissy, your hand's up.
So back to COVID. I wanted to share that I have talked to some colleagues around campus, and I think maybe just this misunderstanding might be fueling some apprehension about reporting vaccine status. Not that they aren't vaccinated, because everyone I've spoken to has shared with me that they are vaccinated, but logging the information into a system. And I think I was asking, why are you apprehensive about that? And one person said, well, going all the way back to when we were told that this would begin to be tracked, we were told that there would be no sort of attachment to an individual's identity, and that it was just meant to, have, collective data, percentages, et cetera. And then a couple months later, I got an email stating my specific PID that said, you haven't logged your vaccine status. And that created some mistrust because they thought, well, clearly I am being tracked individually, and clearly somebody does know that I haven't reported. And so now I really don't feel comfortable sharing the information. And what I heard on the call today, it seems like most people on campus have access to the aggregate data, and there must be some other mechanism in which behind the scenes we're tracked individually, and maybe like emails are going out to say, please, attest, but nobody that would necessarily need not know would, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just wondering if this is a communications thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a totally fair question. And I was looking to see if Kathy was still on the call. So this is something that I admittedly didn't understand entirely, even though I've spent the bulk of my career in public higher education. So it is very common for organizations to have an environmental health and safety office, and they work separate from the rest of the university in terms of managing employee data. So for those of you who work in healthcare, you're providing vaccine information. That information does not move over. They are managed separately. They keep all of that there. Same thing on our side, in that, as I told you, I don't get to see any of the data. You think, oh, well, HR might know, Vice Chancellor might know. I don't get it. That's where the line is drawn. It stays with environmental health and safety. It's in similar ways to the way when you provide the information for EOC and you're asking for an accommodation, they get medical information, but your supervisor never gets to see it. It's that sort of thing. There is a box wrapped around that group. That means it cannot be shared. Environmental health and safety is the same way. And Kathy, you're not still on the call, are you?
I don't think she is. I think she dropped off.
She could probably better explain that than I can, but I think it's a fair point, and one we could probably do a better job of clarifying, that that information is kept so that we can in fact identify, so that from a contact tracing perspective, if you were found to have been in contact with someone, they would need to be able to identify whether or not and then they can identify whether you've been vaccinated or not. So there is a reason to track it, but not to share it with anyone. And I think that is a fine distinction and an important one, because I don't want my employer or my supervisor to have information about me, but I also understand why it's important to have a broader understanding in aggregate of where we sit as an institution. But teasing that apart for broader understanding and understanding where that data goes and how it's kept is important.
Okay, and I will just tack on real fast, which is what I heard from the CINC group today about the legislature wanting access to our employment records. I think that could further aggravate this scenario. So I do think it's really important, and thank you for sharing it, because I'm going to share out what you just shared with me to those folks that have apprehension.
Yeah. And I think just from a matter of course, that I can't say what the legislature will or will not do, but I think that's another reason why this information would never be attached to an employment record. We don't want to have your employment record tied to your health piece. We want to keep those separate.
Great. I think it might be a good idea to have maybe a communication come from EHS to kind of clarify the separation of data and kind of dismiss some of those kind of concerns, because it is being felt across campus.
Yep.
So Evan, I think your hand's up.
Yeah, so I guess mine's kind of in that same sentiment and area with a little bit of the mistrust. So, we got the email saying, hey, go in and attest, and I did. And I didn't upload my COVID vaccine card at the time because mine has my MRN and it has lot numbers and a bunch of other very important information on it. And then I got an email a couple of weeks later that said, hey, you haven't uploaded proof that you had your vaccine done, even though I went in and attested and put in the dates that I got my vaccine. So, and I've had others in my unit with the same concerns. Is that going to make us have to go get tested now? Or how does that fall in the spectrum?
So I did the same thing. And I understood the message to be that if I chose not to upload the information, if I were contacted for having been a close contact of someone who was infected, I would either then have to, at that moment, verify that I had been vaccinated with an actual card. My attestation would no longer be sufficient, or I'd have to go get tested. So it's just the second layer of, if they already have the information in the system that confirms you've been vaccinated, then you wouldn't have to go get tested and you wouldn't have to be asked to prove at that time. If you choose not to go in and upload it now, it simply means that should you be contacted, you would then be required to show proof of vaccination or be tested.
But it wouldn't trigger the testing requirement if you haven't attested.
Correct. It's not triggering the testing requirement on a weekly basis. It's just, you have attested. So that box is checked, but it's not getting to the proof level so that if you're contacted as part of contact tracing, you're off the hook.
Got it. Liz, your hand is up.
Actually, no, I have to unraise my hand, but I also just have to say, I'm so sorry I have to leave early today. I've got to go get study drug for a study patient. And I hope everybody still feels the energy they brought to this meeting this morning with all the caffeine, because we sure have talked about some heavy stuff.
Yes, thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
And Jeanette, your hand's up.
Yeah. Couple of things I wanted to say. Well, I went in and just.
And Jeanette, your microphone is really muffled.
Okay, I'm in the office, so we're still trying to get that. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, better.
Okay, wonderful. So I went into a test as we were speaking, and it required me to go ahead and submit the proof that I had been vaccinated. It wouldn't let me continue to move through. So I just wanted to share that. The other thing that I wanted to share, and this is going all the way back to something that Becky was talking to you about, and thank you, Becky, for responding to this. And this was about the question of what do we do if people are refusing to wear their mask, or they're refusing to go in and attest or be vaccinated. One of the things I wanted to say is Becky is accurate. We wouldn't go straight to termination for that. I would say if you have those types of cases that come up, please feel free to reach out specifically to my unit and we can help you with that. But it starts out with some sort of conversation with the employee, to do some sort of counseling with them to try to understand why there is a refusal to do what the community standards are saying that they should be doing. And then we would more than likely start down that progressive disciplinary action path. So I just wanted to confirm that. So thank you, Becky. That's all I wanted to say. And I've got to jump off a little early as well.
Thanks, Anjanette.
Thanks. Joseph, you had another question?
I was just wondering if we, as part of our calculations for like campus-wide vaccination rates, if we were considering the people that are not providing the attestation after like questioning, like, is that considered okay, maybe we put them into the maybe not vaccinated, and also for the people that we classify as prefer not to answer, are they classified as not being vaccinated, or like, how are we doing that? Because we were talking about that earlier.
Sure. So for the students, they were given a choice when they went into a test, and it was, yes, I've been vaccinated, no, I have not been vaccinated, or I choose not to tell you. For those who were not vaccinated or chose not to tell us, they were automatically put in the testing program. For those who attested, they were exempt from the testing program. The employee attestation was set up a little bit differently. And because it was built off of the voluntary attestation that we already had in place. So it was either you've done it and you're exempt, or you haven't and you're automatically moved into testing. By not doing it, you may be telling us I am not vaccinated, or you may be telling us I choose not to tell you, but we don't care what the difference is. You're automatically bumped into the testing program. Does that answer your question?
Awesome. And I'm realizing we have very little time left, but Becky, does anyone from your team want to give a short little update on open enrollment, which I think starts next month?
Yes, Taryn is here to do that. And before I sign off with her, I just want to thank everybody again. This is a lot of really heavy stuff. I understand the transitions are difficult. I think Jen wrote in this, like, the pandemic is evolving. We're all evolving. Your feedback about communications is fair. I can't tell you how much we talk about trying to communicate effectively. There are no best ways to get all of the information out to all of the right people in the way that they will read them. Sometimes there's messages that are out and people read them, and sometimes there are messages are out and they don't read them. Sometimes we try through deans and vice chancellors. I assure you, we're doing our best. If there are ways that we can be better, I want that feedback. If there are ways that you all can help reaffirm some of the stuff that's going out, let's work on that. But in the meantime, let's get excited for planning about what comes next in terms of benefits. And I'm going to turn it over to Taryn.
Thanks, Becky. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be short. I know you've been on here for a while, so I just have a little information I would like to share with you about the upcoming open enrollment. Can you all see that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So as Katie said, open enrollment is coming up October 11th through the 29th of October this year. The North Carolina State Health Plan has given us 19 days to make changes to our benefits if we so choose. Everyone will default to the 70-30 plan. That's everyone who's currently enrolled in either the 80-20 or the 70-30 plan. You will be moved to the 70-30 plan. If you want to continue your enrollment in the 80-20, you must take action. That means you will need to physically go in and enroll in the 80-20 plan. Also, if you want to take advantage of the premium credits for tobacco attestation, you will have to go in and attest to that as well to get your premium credit. So don't just not do anything, even if you want to stay in the 70-30 plan, because you won't get your premium credit. You have to go in and actually physically do that. For those who are tobacco users and want to get their premium credit for 2022, you can do that now. You can go, you have from now until November to get your tobacco to conduct your tobacco cessation session. You can either go to CVS Caremark or CVS Minute Clinic for that session. It's one counseling session, or you can go to a primary care provider who also provide those services. So we advise you, though, if you go to get your tobacco cessation session, that you keep proof, and that proof will be that the document, the office visit documentation will be used as proof so that the North Carolina State Health Plan can give you your proper credit. And we will ask that you upload that in your benefits portal as well. There are some changes in the dental plans this year, and that's only to the high option dental plan. The premiums there have increased. And the Internal Revenue Service is allowing 100% rollover for your healthcare flexible spending account into your 2022 plan. So that means if you have funds in your 2021 account, there's not a cap this year. You can roll all those funds over into your 2022 plan. And if you want to take advantage of deductions for 2022, you can still enroll for the max for 2022. So those are just a little highlights that we have for upcoming open enrollment. We'll get more information out to you in the coming weeks. But with that, do I have any questions on anything today?
Thank you so much for the update, Taryn. And I think we'll probably have folks from your office back at the October Employee Forum meeting, which is in early October before open enrollment officially begins, which is good. And Jessica Pydus is going to send me some wellness updates, which I'll forward via email to the group. So thank you to our fabulous HR team, as always, for these fantastic updates. We're running short on time, so I'm going to table the consent agenda for now. We'll approve August minutes next month. the first thing I want to start with is, Jen, do you want to start the process of running the Qualtrics election for the staff assembly delegates? And then we can move into reading the second resolution.
Yep, I think that's very easy. We did not have any additional nominations from the floor. So I'm going to put into the chat a Qualtrics survey, which will allow employee forum delegates to vote. You are required to put your name in there. We can't have secret ballots according, by law. And so please do write your name. I'm going to leave it open for, let's say, like 3 minutes, because it's super easy. It's a very short survey. So I'm going to put it in the chat. We'll leave it open for 3 minutes. I will then close the survey. And then I'll start calculating the results and getting that done while we move on and talk about other things. Please only vote if you are an employee forum delegate. All right, so this is going in the chat.
Thanks.
Well, before it goes in, any questions? Sorry, I should ask. Any questions, concerns?
So yeah, if we could stay on for another 5 minutes so we can get that business out of the way, we'll go ahead and move into the second reading of proposed resolution 21-04. In the interest of time, while you guys vote on that Qualtrics survey, Stephanie or Matt, I don't know if you want to kind of present on this, any updates that were made instead of reading through the full text. And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong if we can't do that, but instead of taking the time to read fully through this, just any updates on any changes that were made and any discussion before we move to a vote.
I'm going to wait for Kevin to give me the green light on that.
That should be fine.
Awesome.
Okay. I'll put my video on. I do need to table the HR transparency resolution. The committee is reworking that. So tabling that. This resolution, we didn't make any major changes, mostly just tightening up the language and then being, really, we spent most of our time on the ask to the Chancellor and his cabinet. So if folks are looking through that, I would direct you to spend most of your time looking at the very end. But there were no major changes. Great. And Matt, jump in if I'm misstating something or missing something we focused on.
No, I think you got it.
So Matt, just for everyone's kind of transparency, do you want to share an image or share your screen with the resolution before we open it up for any final comments or questions? And by Matt, I mean either Matt Teal or Matt Banks.
I don't have it pulled up at the moment, so I'll defer to Matt Banks.
Okay.
Katie, I have it pulled up on the form. Oh, Matt's on it.
Here we go. Excellent. And this was sent out to all of y'all before the meeting, so hopefully you had a chance to review it. Is there any questions, comments, or discussion on proposed resolution 21-04 calling for the elimination of the 20% rule as it is currently written? Hearing none, I'm entertaining a motion to approve resolution 21-04.
I move. Shayna.
Okay.
Seconded, Phil.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, the resolution passes. 21-04 calling for the elimination of the 20% rule. Thank you for everyone for your hard work on this. I know that we spent several meetings kind of discussing this and parsing all of the kind of language. I think this is going to be an important one, and hopefully, as Becky has mentioned in previous meetings, we will see good news on this front if, fingers crossed, we have a budget passed in the near future.
Katie, I have to hop off. Can I just say one thing from the Personnel Issues Committee while we're kind of on this topic? So I just want folks to know the committee has heard from some of you and voices from within the committee that we need to, almost like in conjunction with this, take on salary compression that has in part resulted from this 20% rule. and from some other factors. So I just want the forum to know that that is something that we are turning our attention to. So if you are interested in working on a resolution on that or have thoughts, experience, expertise, the forum is so rich with staff experience around these, people way more experienced and expert than I am. Please let Matt Taylor or I know, and we'll make sure you get the calendar invites for our committee meetings. So thank you, everyone. And thank you so much to the committee. People worked really hard on this.
Very much so. Thank you all. I think Jen posted in the chat that voting is now closed. We'll give her a few more minutes to wrap up that process. Is there any final discussion before we wrap up for the day? Lots that we went over.
Yeah, I was just looking at the participant who's still here. Is there anyone from HR still here? Link is still here. Link, do you know, putting you on the spot, do you know if there are any plans in the works for Employee Appreciation Day?
Yeah, we're actually taking a look at how we might be able to pull that off in a different manner. Obviously, there still remain the challenges that existed last year with hesitancy to want to do anything that's going to pull large groups of people together. And so it's likely going to look very, very different, but we're still trying to brainstorm around what might be some good approaches. And I know that Shireen Jenkins is working with her team on some of those proposals. So more to come. That's a long way of saying more to come, but there is some work being done on it. It's just a very challenging environment to figure out how to pull it off.
Absolutely, totally understandable. Thanks for the update, Link.
You bet.
I think everyone's chomping at the bit to at least do our scavenger hunt this year because everyone also loves that. So
it's always a hit.
Yes, just let us know once you guys know more.
You bet.
Arlene, I think you wanted to chime in with an update for the garden.
Yes, Claire Lorch asked if the forum would recognize, sorry, there's no one in my office, the contributions of Kenny Davis, who heads up training for housekeeping and has been Claire's contact for distribution since COVID. He's done an outstanding job of coordinating the efforts and doing whatever it takes to make sure the food gets to the housekeeping staff. When he recently learned that some of the temps working in his office were starting to feed their families, he made sure that they are able to take advantage of the offerings. He'll be retiring at the end of September.
Yes, well, we appreciate all of his efforts. That is so important. And all of the efforts that Claire and her team do to get food to our most in need on campus is just truly amazing, especially during COVID. So thank you, Arlene, for that fantastic update. Jen, are you all set? Not yet. Okay, so she's still working on things. Any other updates from delegates? Hey, how about this? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the August minutes that were sent out in advance of this meeting, while we have everybody as a captive audience.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, the consent agenda passes. Fantastic. Anything else?
More news to the garden. They got a grant to help fund for another 5 years.
Yay! That's exciting. We always like to hear that.
Yeah, they get $6,000 a year for 5 years.
That's fantastic. Oh,
We'll
great.
support a garden assistant position and student assistants.
Let's definitely get Claire some help out there. That's perfect. Matt, your hands up.
Still no permanent buildings?
They can't have permanent buildings because it's a temporary location.
I should just note that in Ardis Watkins' presentation, she asked folks to contact the legislature or legislators on various issues. Just a reminder, please don't use university time, university resources, university computers to contact your legislators. Some people have heard that a million times, but some people are new and may not have heard that at all. Use your personal time for that stuff, please. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Matt. That's helpful always to hear. Jen, I think you gave a thumbs up that you're ready.
Yes, so I have the results for the candidate for the winner of the 3-year term is Keith Hines. Congratulations, Keith. The winner of the 2-year term is James Holman. Congratulations, James. And our 1-year alternate is Laura Pratt.
Hooray! Congratulations to everyone. Staff Assembly delegates are going to have a meeting October, oh God, Shayna, what is it? It's end of October sometime is the next Staff Assembly meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Looking it up now, I think it's the 26th and the 27th, but I could be completely wrong.
And that's where they get installed as new delegates, correct?
Correct. I'll get back to you. I don't have the dates in yet.
Great. Well, we will be in contact with the new delegates with details on the next meeting. And we'll get that information, I'm assuming somehow to Staff Assembly of who got elected for our positions. Shayna, I'll work with you on
October 25 and 26.
Cool. Thanks, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
I was close.
You were very close.
Close only counts in horseshoes. Hand grenades, is that right?
So Shayna, you and I can work together on how best to communicate that information to Staff Assembly of who's our new representation.
You got it.
Awesome. All right. Any final burning things to discuss before we adjourn for the day? Thank you all for.
I think Tiffany brought up a good point in the chat that I want to highlight. She says, does it not seem off that our university is okay with hosting football games and tailgating, but not Employee Appreciation Day? That doesn't send the best message to employees.
Let me be very clear that there's no discussion about not doing anything for Employee Appreciation Day. It's just rethinking the way that it's done so that we can do it in the safest manner possible. So I apologize if perhaps I gave that impression with my response to your question earlier. We definitely want to make sure that we are doing employee appreciation, but we also want to make sure we're doing it in the safest manner possible. So hopefully my original answer didn't create that confusion.
And I think we definitely appreciate those efforts to keep employees safe. So thank you to your team. I know that that's not an easy process of figuring out the best way to do a large event like that, to appreciate staff and still kind of keep everyone safe. So excellent. Sir, anyone? Yeah.
It's me.
Hi, Kate.
It's me. Hey. Did I miss the election results? Or did Jen Danielle gave it? No. Okay. Well, I mean, okay. I mean, I wasn't questioning mine. I am the Beyonce of the group. So
yes,
it's like.
It's you and it's James and it's Laura.
Okay. No, Lamar, student body president, walked into my office and had some questions. So I was just like, okay, but I missed it. Okay.
You, of course, are in. So, oh yes, Kevin, slay all day, Keith. Excellent. Is there any motion to adjourn?
A motion we adjourn the body meeting.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.
Have a
As
great
always,
day, guys.
great to see all of you.
Everybody.
We'll see all of you guys next time.
Stay safe, y'all.
Stay safe, everybody.
Who was that with the Barry White voice?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I missed it. All right, bye, Katie.
Bye, y'all.
Just to be clear, I don't plan on going to any large gatherings at all anyway, but I just found it a little off that, yeah, y'all are right comfortable with these football games and tailgating and whatnot. And then all the careful consideration for employee appreciation.
Well, Tiffany, the football games make the university money, so they're going to put.
But that's exactly what I wanted to draw. I wanted to say that without saying that. Like, that's why I was saying I think that some employees might feel a certain way. Honestly, like I said, I wouldn't plan on going to any large gathering anyway, but just, it just drives home the point that money is a factor here. Like, you're totally okay with, inundating our campus with all of these people and tailgating and whatnot, but then pretend to be careful when it comes to other things. Like that just, I just wanted to say that without saying the words.
I think we caught your drift for sure.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Matt, as always, for catching that and updating everybody. I know I missed that in the chat. There was
no worries. You had a lot to worry about.
Exactly. All right. Well, y'all have a good one.
Thanks.
As always, I appreciate y'all.
You as well. Take care.
Thanks, David. Thanks for captioning.
Duncan, can I help you? I don't know who Duncan is.